he had often adorned with floral wreaths, he lifted up his swimming eyes and both his pallid arms, and when he had fastened over the capital a rope that held a dangling noose, he said, "Are these the garlands that delight your heart, you cruel and unnatural woman?" Then he thrust in his head, turning even then towards her, and hung a hapless weight with broken neck. The door, struck by the motion of his feet as they were quivering, seemed to utter sounds of groaning, and when it flew open showed the sad sight. All the servants cried aloud, and after they had tried in vain to save him, carried him from there to his mother's house, to her because his father was then dead. She held him to her bosom and embraced the cold limbs of her dead child. After she had uttered words so natural to the grief of wretched mothers, after she had done what wretched mothers do at such sad times, she led a tearful funeral through the streets, the pale corpse following high upon the bier, on to a pyre laid in the central square. By chance, Anaxarete's house was near the way through which the mournful funeral was going with the corpse, and the sad sound of wailing reached the ears of that proud girl, hard-hearted and already goaded on by an avenging God. Moved by the sound, she said, "Let me observe their snivelling rites," and she ascended to an upper room, provided with wide windows. Scarcely had she looked at Iphis, laid out on the bier, when her eyes stiffened, and she turned all white, as warm blood left her body. She tried then to turn back from the window, but she stood transfixed there. She then tried to turn her face away from that sad sight, but could not move. And by degrees the stone, which had always existed, petrified in her cold breast, and took possession of her heart and limbs. This is not fiction, and that you may know. Salamis keeps that statue safe today, formed of the Virgin, and has also built a temple called Venus the Watchful Goddess. Warned by her fate, O sweet nymph, lay aside prolonged disdain, and cheerfully unite yourself to one who loves you. Then may frost of springtime never nip your fruit and bud, nor rude winds strike the blossom. When the god, fitted for every shape, had said these words, in vain he laid the old woman's form aside, and was again a youth. On her he seemed to blaze, as when the full light of the brilliant sun, after it has dispelled opposing clouds, has shone forth with not one to intercept. He purposed violence, but there was then no need of force. The lovely nymph was charmed, was captivated by the god's bright form, and felt a passion answering to his love. At Procas' death, unjust Amulius seized with his troops the whole Ausonian wealth, and yet old Numitor, obtaining aid from his 2 grandsons, won the land again which he had lost, and on the festival of Pales were the city walls begun. King Tatius with his Sabines went to war. Tarpeia, who betrayed the citadel, died justly underneath the weight of arms. Then troops from Cures crept, like silent wolves, without a word toward men subdued by sleep, and tried the gates that Ilius' son had barred. Then Saturn's daughter opened wide a gate, turning the silent hinge. Venus alone perceived the bars of that gate falling down. She surely would have closed it, were it not impossible for any deity to countervail the acts of other gods. The Naiads of Ausonia occupied a spring that welled up close to Janus' fane. To them she prayed for aid. The fountain nymphs could not resist the prayer of Venus, when she made her worthy plea, and they released all waters underground. Till then the path by Janus' fane was open, never yet had floods risen to impede the way. But now they laid hot sulphur of a faint blue light beneath the streaming fountain, and with care applied fire to the hallowed ways with smoking pitch. By these and many other violent means, hot vapours penetrated to the source of the good fountain. Only think of it! Those waters which had rivaled the cold Alps, now rivaled with their heat the flames themselves. And while each gate-post steamed with boiling spray, the gate, which had been opened, but in vain, to hardy Sabines just outside, was made impassable by the heated fountain's flood, till Roman soldiers had regained their arms. After brave Romulus had led them forth and covered Roman ground with Sabines dead and its own people, and the accursed sword shed blood of father-in-law and son-in-law, with peace they chose at last to end the war, rather than fight on to the bitter end. Tatius and Romulus divide the throne. Tatius had fallen, and you, O Romulus, were giving laws to peoples now made one, when Mars put off his helmet and addressed the father of gods and men in words like these: "The time has come, for now the Roman state has been established on a strong foundation, and no more must rely on one man's strength. The time has come for you to give the prize, promised to me and your deserving grandson, to raise him from the earth and grant him here a flirting place in heaven. One day you said to me before a council of the gods, for I recall now with a grateful mind how I took note of your most gracious speech, 'Him you shall lift up to the blue of heaven.' Now let all know the meaning of your words." The god all-powerful nodded his assent, and he obscured the air with heavy clouds, and on a trembling world he sent below harsh thunder and bright lightning. Mars at once perceived it was a signal plainly given for promised change, so, leaning on a spear, he mounted boldly into his chariot, and over blood-stained yoke and eager steeds he swung and cracked the loud resounding lash. Descending through steep air, he halted on the wooded summit of the Palatine, and there, while Ilia's son was giving laws, needing no pomp and circumstance of kings, Mars caught him up. His mortal flesh dissolved into thin air, as when a ball of lead shot up from a broad sling melts all away and soon is lost in heaven. A nobler shape was given to him, one more fitted to adorn rich couches in high heaven, the shape divine of Quirinus, clad in the trabea. His queen, Hersilia, wept continually, regarding him as lost, till regal Juno commanded Iris to glide down along her curving bow, and bring to her these words: "O matron, glory of the Latin race, and of the Sabines, worthy to have been the consort chosen by so great a man, and now to be his partner as the god Quirinus, weep no more. If you desire to see your husband, let me guide you up to a grove that crowns the hill of Quirinus, shading a temple of the Roman king." Iris obeyed Juno's will, and gliding down to earth along her tinted bow, conveyed the message to Hersilia, who replied, with modest look and hardly lifted eye, "Goddess, although it is not in my power to say your name, I am quite certain you must be a goddess. Lead me, oh lead me, until you show to me that hallowed form of my beloved husband. If the fates will but permit me once again to see his features, I will say I have won heaven." At once Hersilia and the virgin child of Thaumas went together up the hill of Romulus. Descending through thin air there came a star, and then Hersilia, her tresses glowing fiery in the light, rose with that star, as it returned through air. And her, the founder of the Roman state, received with dear familiar hands. He changed her old-time form, and with the form her name. He called her Hora, and let her become a goddess, now the mate of Quirinus. End of Book 14, Part 3. Recording by Christina Vasilevsky of www.105creations.com.